Hello and welcome. In this video, we'll take a look at some of the latest updates that will be available in the May 2020 release of Power BI Desktop. And we'll also have members of the product team demo highlights of several new features that are really going to enrich your reporting. So let's get started. First up in our reporting section, we have a new preview capability that will allow you to curate featured tables for use in Excel. Let's see a demo of this feature from Wukash.
In this month's release of Power BI Desktop, we're adding featured tables configuration to the data model. It's going to let you use those featured tables in Excel's data types gallery. So here you can see that there's organizational data powered by Power BI, and we've published customers, products, and suppliers tables as featured tables from Power BI datasets. Now we can use that to look up data for customers. So in this customer complaints list, I can quickly find rows in Power BI datasets and add field values from those rows directly to the Excel grid. So here I add a number of rows so I can find the customer contact information for customer complaints and call those customers quickly. So this relies on shared and certified datasets. So if you certify a data set, it'll bubble up to the very top of the list in the data types gallery. As you can see, the data is just normal Excel grid data, so you can filter it, sort it, and format it as you wish. You can even use it in formulas. You'll notice here that the fields that are available are all of the fields in the table. Now, to set this up, you have to go into Power BI Desktop. You have to turn on the preview feature in the File, Options and Settings options, and then go down to Preview Features and turn on Featured Tables. Once you've done that, you might have to restart Desktop. You pick the table that you want, in this case Customers, and you go into the Properties pane and you turn on the Is Featured Table property and you turn it to Yes. In the Set up Featured Tables dialog, you provide the three values for description, row label, and a key column, which keeps the rows unique. That way Excel can bind those rows to a specific cell in Excel. So once you've set that up, what you have to do is you have to publish that data model up to the Power BI service and share it with the right people. And when you do that, the featured tables start appearing in Excel. They may not appear right away, so you might have to restart Excel to see them. Also, if you certify those data sets, you'll then be able to have them bubble up to the top of the list in the Excel data types gallery. Now, to configure all of this, you can actually go into the Power BI admin portal and can use the Allow Connections to Featured Tables property to determine what's right for your organization. By default, it's enabled, but you can disable it. Also, if you change the Export Data property and you disabled it, then that actually disables the Featured Tables stuff too.
Next, we have another new preview feature, which will allow you to add an Apply button for the filter pane to apply all changes at once. We have Sujatha here for a demo.
So before I get into the demo of the new functionality that we've added this month, I want to first step back and show you what was the previous experience. So previously, if you were to use the filter pane, you only had two options when it came to filter changes that were made on the basic filter type. So the first option you had was, which was the default and is still the default, is the ability to essentially instantly apply all the basic filter changes. Meaning as soon as you change one of the basic filters, you'll see that reflected in the report. Now, another option that was quite useful to people was the ability to add an apply button to even the basic filters. The reason why some people might opt into this is they want to reduce the number of queries being sent. So essentially, they're only hitting the apply button once they're ready to issue the filter query. So let me actually just quickly demo that and then we can get into the new feature. So here, for example, we have some basic filter. So you'll notice that as I'm changing the filter, we're not actually issuing the query until I go ahead and hit apply here. So when I hit apply, then you see the report has actually changed and we're now filtering it by store Leo. So one of the downsides about this option is that you can imagine that as you're changing multiple filters, each time you're adding an additional click every time you want to apply a filter. So one feature ask that we get from customers is, can we just have a single apply button where I can, make all my changes to all these different filter cards, and then once I'm ready, I can hit apply. And so this month, that's what we're delivering as a preview. So let's take a look at another report to see this in action. So now in this report, which looks very similar, you'll notice that the only difference is that there's this new apply button at the bottom of the filter pane. So let me show you how I added that. So in the file, options and settings, options, and then if you go under current file and select query reduction, there's this new preview option here that allows you to add the single apply button to the filter pane. You'll notice that these are radio buttons, so that means that these are mutually exclusive, so you can't have both instantly apply a basic filter while also having a single apply button at the bottom of the filter pane. So once you select the option there, you'll need to restart if you haven't. And so in this case, let's take a look at some examples. So let's say I want to add multiple changes before I hit the apply button. So essentially I want to defer when I'm issuing the queries. So let's say in this case, I want to change both the product and store, and then I'll hit apply. So let's take a look at the product field. I'm going to go ahead and select Excel. You notice that as soon as I selected Excel, there was a change that's been made. And even though the restatement doesn't change here because we haven't issued the query, the apply button detected that there was a change, and so it went from the disabled to the enabled state. Now let's also change another filter. So let's open up store, and let's select a different store as well. And now that I've made my changes and I'm ready to hit apply, let's go ahead and issue these changes. So you'll see now that the report reflects the Excel product and as well as the new store that I've added. So basically with this experience, I was able to, reduce the number of clicks while also reducing the number of queries that get issued based on filter changes. Now, one more thing I want to mention about this feature is that there are some formatting options available. So you can change the formatting of the apply button. However, it is tied to the filter pane settings as well, and we do plan on improving that. So we really appreciate any feedback that you have there in terms of what improvements you'd like to see for the apply all.
This month we also have a couple of improvements to change detection. Change detection can now be simulated in desktop, and you can now track change detection queries in the Performance Analyzer. Let's have Miguel walk us through a demo of these updates.
Now, let's take a look at the two new additions for change detection. If you remember, in the previous release, we enabled the capability for you to create a change detection measure that would pull your direct query source for changes and update the visuals on a page. So the new two additions that we have this month are number one, a simulation, so you can see your visuals changing based on that change detection. And second, the ability to see the performance of the measure itself in the Performance Analyzer. So let's take a look. As you can see here, we have the change detection icon in the modeling view. What I'm going to do is, we already have this defined change detection measure. So we're going to go and turn it on. We're going to go to the formatting pane, turn on page refresh. I have auto page refresh by default in this case, and I'm going to change it to that detection measure, change detection measure that I have. So this one is going to check every 2 seconds if we added new customers, and you can see that now in Power BI Desktop visuals update based on the result of that measure itself. So let me turn this off again, and let's go to the Performance Analyzer. So the reason why we wanted to add this measure here is for you to optimize or troubleshoot the solution that you have for updating your data in a more frequent fashion. So let me turn on the Performance Analyzer. I'm going to start recording, and if you remember, you can basically interact with your data, and you're going to see different buckets of things that are happening. In this particular case, we are cross-highlighting, and all of the visuals in this page have a specific performance. So what I'm going to do now is, let me clear it first so we get a more clear picture, and we're going to turn on page refresh again. So let me deselect here, formatting pane, and we're going to turn this on. There you go. So let me stop it for a minute so we can take a look. You can see that we have a new section that it's called change detection for that particular measure. You can see the DAX query or the time spent in the DAX query, the time spent going to the direct query source, and any other sources of time spent. You can also copy the query and actually see it later.
Moving on to the next update, we're excited to announce the drill through button action is now generally available. As part of this release, you can now conditionally set the drill through destination, conditionally format disabled and enabled state tooltips, and customize the formatting for the disabled state. Sujatha will now show us the feature in action.
To improve drill-through discoverability, back in March we released a public preview of a new drill-through action type for buttons. Now this month we're excited to announce that the feature is now generally available. And part of that release, we've added 3 new improvements. So in this demo, I'm going to walk us through what are these improvements and why they can be very helpful and in what scenarios. So the first thing we've done is we've added the option to conditionally format the drill through destination. Let's take a look at some examples. So in this report, I have multiple drill through destinations that I could go to. Instead of having, 3 or 4 different buttons, for each, essentially one for each drill through page, I can have one single button that can drill through to my destination just by selecting which destination that I want to go to. So for example, if I select Word, the button is enabled, but I can also, so if I hover over it, it says I can click to drill through to store, which is selected here. But I can also change which page I want to go to. So for example, I'm going to select market details. And then I'm going to go ahead and click drill through. And so now instead of store, it's going to go to market details, all within that same button. So let's take a look at another example of why conditional formatting for destination could be helpful. So in this example, if I hover over the drill through button, the disabled tooltip tells me that I'll need to select a single product and a single store. So if I just select a single product alone, you'll notice that the button is still in a disabled state. It hasn't changed. So now let's say if I control click to select a store now, you'll see that the button has now become enabled. You see that I can click to drill through to store. Now let's go back to the original page. One more thing you'll notice is that the disabled state of the button has been customized to really blend well with this blue background. And so part of this release, we've also added the ability for you to fully customize the disabled state just like you could with the other states such as on press and on hover and the default state. I also want to point out is that we've added the ability to customize the tooltips so that those can be conditionally formatted as well. So this can be particularly useful if you've also customized the destination to be conditionally formatted and you want to make sure that the tooltip is informative for whatever conditions that you've added. So in this example, if I hover over it, the button without selecting anything, you'll see it tells me that I need to select a single product and a single store. And so let's say if I only select, a single product and I'm wondering why is it still disabled, when I hover over it, it gives me more prescriptive tooltip to tell me that, hey, I need to also control click and select a single store. And so I can do that. So basically the button at each state based on the user selection, the disabled tooltip was able to update to really help guide me through the steps that I need in order to make sure that drill through is enabled. So let's switch to desktop to see the creator's experience for these new updates. So first I'm going to show you how I created the multi-destination drill through example. What I did was I started with the enter data functionality and I just typed in the names for the different drill through pages. I also added the page for none where if I wanted the slicer to default to no destination selected. You can also add another column where if you want a specific ordering for the destinations in a drop-down list, you can choose to add another column and then you can sort by that column such that the destinations appear in the order which you expect. So once I created this table, I added a slicer onto the page. And then in the slicer itself, you'll need to make sure that in the selection controls that single select is on, because you can only drill through to one destination at a time. And then one more thing you'll want to note is that for the slicer is, depending on real estate, you might want to change it from which it defaults to a list. You might want to change it to a drop-down. So in this case here, I'm using a drop-down. So now that I have the slicer selected, I'll need to configure the button. So the way that I do this is, so for the drill through button, if I go to the action tab, I conditionally formatted the destination. So actually, let me just clear this to show you how I set it up. So normally you might have selected one destination by default, but now if you click the conditional formatting option, you can go ahead and select that new field which you just created. So this would be the select destination that we created over here. And so we can just keep with the summarization first because we already went ahead and changed the slicer to a single select slicer. So we're gonna hit OK. So now we can just quickly test it out. So let's say if I hit Word, and then I'm gonna go ahead and I can control click to then drill through to store details, which is selected here. And then if I change it to market details, you'll see that the drill through destination, now I can control click to drill through to market details. So that was the first example. So now let's take a look at the next example. So I'm going to move over to a different page. So in this example, I wanted to add the additional logic of the user has to select a store, not just a product, in order to drill through. So the way that I did this was I created a specific measure that's going to essentially check whether a single store has been selected. And if it has been selected, it will output the string store details, which is where we want to drill through to. Otherwise, it's just going to output an empty string. So if you output an empty string, the button is still going to be disabled because there's no pages that are just like blank empty strings. So you have to have your drill through page named something. It cannot be an empty string. And so let's see here. So let me show you for the action. So I did conditionally format the destination. So we can open up here. So I'm using destination logic. So let me show you real quick this one right here. So basically what this is checking for is that if there is a selected value, it's going to go ahead and return stored details, and then otherwise it's just going to return an empty string. And so now let's test that out here. So if I hit Word, it's still disabled. And then finally when I hit Control click on Leo, you see that now it's enabled. So the other update that I want to show you is that you can really customize the formatting for the button itself. So if I click on the button, let's look at the fill options here, is you'll now see a disabled option where you can really customize the fill of the disabled state. You can also do this for outline as well. I don't have an outline here, but you could do this for outline. You can do it for icon, button text as well. And finally, the last thing I want to add is that you can also conditionally format the disabled tooltip. And so like I showed, it could be really helpful if you're using conditional formatting for the destination and you want to be even more prescriptive. So the way you do that is in the action tab. You'll see here for disabled tooltip, there's now the option to conditionally format.
Next, we have a couple of enhancements to the built-in page navigation action. You can conditionally set the navigation destination, and you can also use page navigation for shapes and images. Let's see a demo from Sujatha.
So previously, if I click on this button here, I'm only going to select one page that it can go to, and so that page is static. But imagine if you could make it dynamic. So imagine if you could make it based on user selection or based on a certain data point that's been filtered to. So in this example, I've created this drop down here. So when I have the user click on the drop down, they can then select which page that they want to go to and then navigate to that page. And so this could be really handy, especially if, in this case, I'm on a drill through page, as you can see here. And previously, many people add the go back button. But what if you want to have a little bit more customized experience where not only can the user go back, but they can also choose a certain page to go to, and maybe that page actually might even be a hidden page, but you're okay adding the hidden pages in the drill through section. So this is where you could add pages that are both visible and hidden to the user, and you can really customize what pages you show here. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and just select the home page, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit go. I want to show you how I created the multi-destination navigation. So what I'll do first is I'm going to enter in data to create a table, and the table is essentially just going to have the names of the pages that I want to go to. So I click enter data, and then I have the page names already copied to my clipboard, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in. And one thing you can do is if you want the pages to be in a certain order, so if you only want it to be alphabetical, you can just leave it as is, and then you can choose the sorting itself in the slicer. But if you want it to be in a certain order that's not alphabetical, like a custom order, you can just insert a column here and essentially just go and number these based on the order that you want. So in this case, this is the exact order that I want them in, so I'm just going to number them 1 through 6 like that. So go ahead and call this pages, and then you're going to go ahead and load it. So once you have that loaded, in a slicer, we're going to go and drag and drop the field that we created called page names. So if you select the page name, then you'll go to the column tools tab, and you'll see this option in the ribbon called sort by column. And you just click that, and you're going to just change it to the other column that you created. So now when you open up the dropdown, you'll now see that it's sorted based on the order that I specified in column 1. For the next step, we'll need to set up the page navigation button. So I have this button here, and we'll open up the action tab. And as you can see, previously for page navigation, you'd have to, essentially manually select one of these pages, and that would be static. But now there's this new option where you can conditionally format the destination. So this conditional formatting is going to be an exact string match. So all we need to do is select the conditional formatting button, and then we're going to format based on the field value, which is the page names field. So let's go ahead and search for page names, and we'll select that, and we can just pick the first summarization. This is fine because we're using a single select slicer anyway, so there's always going to be something selected. And click OK. So that's pretty much it for the setup. All you needed to do was create that extra table that had the list of the pages, and then you could optionally choose a column if you wanted to change the sort order. And then you just need to reference that field within the destination using conditional formatting. And now this button is conditionally formatted so that whenever the user changes which page they want to go to, that button will navigate to that page. And the other update to page navigation is that we've now added support for shapes and images. So if you want to use one of the built-in shapes, you can go ahead and do so. So here's an example using the arrow. If you go to the action tab, you'll now see that page navigation is available. Let's say also if you want a really customized looking button, the best way you could achieve that is actually through images. So let's say you create an image, and I created this one here of this go button, which now includes this drop shadow. So in the image itself, I can select page navigation as the action type, and I can also conditionally format the destination like you saw in the earlier demo.
The next update is that buttons now support fill images. Let's have Sujatha show a quick demo.
So sometimes we hear from report authors that they need really custom stylized buttons. And previously what they did is they would need to, create an image that had the button. But the downside to that is that images itself, they don't have the notion of states. So you can't get states, like on click and on hover and whatnot. So now we want to add the same capability for adding an image, but while also having the states that buttons have. So let's take a look at how I set that up. So here is a completely blank button, and let's go ahead and add fill images to it for the different states. So let's say for the default state, I have some image here where I can use the default. We'll use that. And then I also have a hover and press image. So let's say for hover, it does inherit the default image, so I'll just need to remove it. And let's select the hover one. Click that. And then let's do the on press. So again, it inherits the default. So let's remove that. And then let's go ahead and add here for on click or on press. So now we can see it in action. Here is it on hover, and then here's it when I click.
Another update is that visuals now support drop shadows. Let's see a demo from Rien.
This month, we're adding a new formatting feature to all visuals, drop shadows. Toggling this option on in the formatting pane will display a shadow behind the border of your visual. In the shadow formatting card, you can customize the look and feel of each shadow. Let's take a look at an example. Here, I've turned on the shadow, and you can see that a little shadow has appeared on the bottom right of the visual. You can choose between a number of these presets, be it bottom right, bottom left, etc. Or, if you go into custom, you can adjust individual properties of the drop shadow. Here, size controls whether the radius or thickness of the shadow is large or small, like you can see here. Blur controls how gradually that shadow fades into the background, and keep in mind that this blur extends beyond the range set by size. So if I make blur larger, the transition from shadow to background color is smoother, but you can see that it goes past the radius defined by size. Angle controls where the shadow will show up. The shadow moves clockwise, so in other words, at 0 degrees, the shadow is horizontal and to the right. Same thing as 360 degrees. And at 180 degrees, the shadow is horizontal and to the left. 90 degrees will be vertically down. Distance controls the shadow's offset from the center of the visual. So the center of the shadow is distance pixels apart from the center of the visual. If I make that distance larger, the shadow shows up even further from the visual. From the center of the visual, that is. And lastly, transparency adjusts the transparency of the shadow. So whether or not it shows up, you can set it to 0 transparency or 100% transparency, and how transparent you make it is all up to you.
The last update in this section is that we have now officially moved over to the new filter experience, meaning that any reports with the old filter pane have been automatically migrated to the modern experience. Moving on to our analytics section, we're excited to announce that the Decomposition Tree is now generally available. Let's have Justina walk us through a demo of all of the improvements to this AI visual.
We are really excited to announce the GA of the Decomposition Tree, and with it a couple of updates to the visual. For those of you not familiar with the Decomp tree, you can find it over here in the Vis pane. And it's a really good visual to use to do root cause analysis, as it lets you drill down into any factor you want, in any order. And if I click on demand type over here, you're going to see the first update to the visual, which is the conditional formatting support. So even though I am analyzing my percentage of products on backorder, I'm actually coloring it by the backorder dollar amount, so I can visualize both pieces of information at the same time. Now I'm going to do a couple of more manual splits and AI splits. AI splits are where Power BI automatically chooses where it's going to drill down based on the conditions that I give it. In this case, I wanted to find the highest value. And another thing that users have given us feedback about is the fact that the visual doesn't work very well in compact spaces. So now when you actually go and add it into a smaller space, the visualization is going to automatically resize as we have added a responsive design. We have also added improvements to the path that is selected, because now as I scroll up and down, the path doesn't go out of view. It stays in the selection until I go and select something else. so you can now easily explore your data even in a compact space like we have over here. Another improvement we have added is the ability to filter the visual at any point of time, not just on the last node. So if I want to, let's say, only look at my accurate products, I can click on that and the rest of my visualization cross-filters. If I click on April over here, for example, you're going to see we also have added cross-highlighting support to the tree, not just cross-filtering support. The final addition that I wanted to show off is the ability to now drill through on the tree. So if I right-click on this particular node and choose to drill through, it's going to retain the whole context of my path over here as it moves on to the next page.
Next is our visualization section. First, we have the packed bubble chart visual from XViz. Next, we have some updates to the hierarchy filter by XViz. Includes highly requested improvements such as search, the unbalanced hierarchy support, and conditional formatting support, and other formatting options. The last update in this section is that the Power Apps visual now supports all of the different languages that Power BI supports. Moving on to our modeling section. Starting with this month's release, we've updated the DAX separator settings to default to the standard DAX characters of comma as the list separator and period as the decimal symbol. Next, in our data preparation section, we have a few updates. We're excited to announce that data flows now support direct query mode. In order to get you started, you'll need to have the data flow configured on a premium workspace, and you will need to ensure that the enhanced compute property on the capacity is enabled. With these two conditions met, you'll see the option to connect via data query mode when connecting a data flow inside the Power BI desktop. This month, we've also updated the Navigator dialog. The Web by Example now automatically suggests tables by default. This should help you save some time and clicks, since you no longer need to click through to extract your tables. Our last update in this section is that we've added an enhancement to query diagnostics. You can now turn on data privacy petitions for query diagnostics. You can find this setting in the Diagnostics tab of the Options dialog. In our Data Connectivity section, we have several new connectors, including Witivio, Linkar, WebTrends, PlanView Project Place, Shortcuts Business Insights, Vessel Insights, and Zoho Creator Connector. Next, in our Other section, we have a new capability for easy dataset impact analysis. Let's hand it off to Yaron for a demo of the feature.
In Power BI, you can build multiple reports on top of a single dataset. Until today, when you did the change to a dataset, you couldn't have known if there are any other reports that can be impacted. Now introduce Dataset Impact Analysis feature that comes to help you with that. Let's say that you change a measure in this dataset, and you publish it back to the service. We now provide you a notification that lets you know how many items can be potentially impacted. In this example, you can see 8 reports, 1 dashboard, in 6 different workspaces that can be impacted. To see more details, you can click on the View Impact button. This takes you to the service to see more information and take an action. To assess the impact, you can see how many users and how many views are per each of the items that is connected to this dataset. You can also take an action to notify the contacts about the upcoming change.
That's all we have on updates for the May 2020 release. We hope you liked the demos and enjoy all of the latest features. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next month.